It goes without saying that there are perhaps no blockbusters bigger at the moment than superhero franchises. With the sheer amount hitting theaters every single year though, it's no surprise to learn that at least a few of them had pretty checkered production histories. The primary issue though seems to be tied to the rising and falling fortunes of certain directors who are often tossed to the side of the capricious studio system. Hell, look outside of superhero films and towards the world of Star Wars, and directors there seemingly have about a 50-50 chance of getting booted off a project midway through production. Consequently, with clashes between directors and studios getting more and more common, it's led to a bunch of superhero movies that have gone through plenty of different visions before they made it to the big screen. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 ways your favourite superhero films were almost completely different. Number 8. Joss Whedon's alternate Wonder Woman. While Joss Whedon hasn't had a shortage of opportunities to direct big-budget superhero films over the years, helming the likes of the Avengers, Age of Ultron and Justice League, he's had more than a couple of those projects slip through his fingers. Most notable was his pass at a Wonder Woman script, which he was primed to direct back in the mid-2000s. Unlike the Patty Jenkins version, which took place primarily during and after World War I, his version would have took place in the Gotham-like city of Gateway. Steve Trevor is no longer a soldier in this version, but a military aid worker delivering resources to isolated communities. Likewise, the villain here was Strife, the CEO of a munitions company hell-bent on destroying the city. Yep, this sounds very much like an early 2000s superhero movie. Of course, the project didn't go into production, but the script was leaked back in 2017 to a less than generous response. Number 7. George Miller's troubled Justice League. The Justice League movie may have finally made its appearance in theaters back in 2016, but it wasn't WB's first attempt at getting the superhero team-up movie off the ground. In fact, back in 2008, George Miller came this close to making his own version of the film titled Justice League Mortals. Unlike other movies on this list, Justice League Mortals was actually quite far through development when it was canned, already getting a cast including Adrian Brody as the Flash, Common as the Green Lantern, and Armie Hammer as Batman. Pre-production had even started with an earmarked $250 million budget set aside and Weta Workshop making costumes and sets for the production. Had things gone to plan, DC would have had their own ensemble team-up film long before the Avengers was ever a thing, but unfortunately a few tax rebates not getting upheld, and the fact that WB were wanting to move ahead with Superman Returns and The Dark Knight meant the project was put on indefinite hold. It never ever materialized. Sadly. Number 6. James Cameron's creepy Spider-Man. In one of the weirder chapters in Marvel's history, back in the early 90s, none other than himself, James Cameron, made an 80-page scriptment for a Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man movie. However, it was one that took a distinctly adult tone. Cameron seemed to be fixated on the idea that Spidey's story was a metaphor for puberty, an idea which isn't all that new, but the way he executed was, well, it was kind of creepy. In one scene, Peter Parker wakes up covered in a sticky white substance. I'm sure you've all been there, but in another he actually spies on Mary Jane as she's getting changed. Not cool, Peter. Not cool. Later though, she does sleep with him on a bridge, having been seduced by Peter's description of how certain spiders mate. Jesus Christ, this guy is going to be a serial killer. One of the lines that Peter actually used to get Mary Jane into bed, or I guess on the bridge, was that the strands of the male spider's web were used to tie the female down. And it's very, very 50 Shades of Grey, that, isn't it, I guess? It just gets worse, this script. It's hard to imagine Tom Holland's preppy hero saying these lines, to say the least, so it's probably a good thing that Cameron never got to make this weird version. Number 5. John Singleton's Civil Rights Black Panther. The original Black Panther came from another discarded 90s movie treatment, with John Singleton ready to direct and Wesley Snipes in talks to star. In fact, the movie was something of a labour of love for Snipes in particular, who spent years trying to get the project off the ground thanks to his love of the character back when he was a kid. Likewise, it was his belief that T'Challa would offer a positive, inspiring view of African-American culture in an era of the LA riots and the OJ verdict. Unfortunately though, him and Singleton didn't quite see eye to eye. In fact, the director actually wanted to set the movie in the civil rights era, giving the title a more literal meaning. While that could have been an interesting take, it wasn't what Snipes wanted, and the two clashed and couldn't come to a compromise, leading to the whole project being scrapped entirely. Number 4. Terry Gilliam's new take on Watchmen. Though Zack Snyder's take on Watchmen is quite contentious, it's undoubtedly one of the filmmaker's best movies, and it was clear that he was passionate about the project through every part of production. However, before him, there was one director ready to take on the gargantuan task of this allegedly unfilmable project, and it was none other than Terry Gilliam. In fact, for over a year in the 90s, Gilliam and his Brazil screenwriter worked on the project pretty much non-stop. From the tidbits teased by producer Joel Silver, their version would have allegedly been more iconoclastic, a divergent take on the source material, whereas Snyder's was perhaps overly faithful to a point. Like Snyder though, Gilliam decided to not use the interdimensional death squid from the original source material. In his version, Dr. Manhattan actually travels back through time at the end of the movie, resulting in a universe where no superheroes, not Rorschach or Night Owl or anyone, come to exist. Yeah, you can probably guess that die-hard fans would have hated this one as well. Number 3. Guillermo Del Toro's occult-focused Doctor Strange. While Scott Derrickson's 2016 Doctor Strange movie was full of visual artistry, it played it quite safe with, well, how strange the original source material sometimes gets. It stands to reason then that legendary fantasists Neil Gaiman and Guillermo Del Toro might have been better picks for the project. Though that pairing does sound too good to be true, the pairing did pitch their own version of Doctor Strange back in 2007 that they'd thought up on the set of Hellboy. However, it sounds like their take was a little too odd for Marvel's taste, with Del Toro wanting to get the character out of the suit and focus more on the occult elements. Although the studio did ultimately decline, it's not hard to imagine a world where a director of Del Toro's clout was given a handle on the project. Then again, I suppose if we pondered all of Del Toro's failed projects, we'd be here all day. R.I.P. Justice League Dark. Number 2. Darren Aronofsky's Taxi Driver Batman. Darren Aronofsky has been linked to plenty of superhero movies over the years, but sadly, he's never got the opportunity to actually make any of them. Most recently, he was lined up to helm 2013's The Wolverine, which he unfortunately had to pull out of due to some real-life personal problems. Before that project, though, he was lined up to take on none other than the Batman himself. Aronofsky being Aronofsky though, he couldn't help but put his own take on the franchise, ripping up the rulebook entirely and throwing it out the window with pretty much every Batman comic ever made. Well, except Batman Year One. Thanks to a few interviews, we know that his version of Batman would have been a radical take on the character, targeting an R rating and even lining up Joaquin Phoenix as the caped Crusader. The director was going to strip the hero of his wealth, make Alfred Al the Mechanic, and pretty much approach the whole project like it was Taxi Driver rather than Batman Begins. Though that could have been awesome, it's perhaps unsurprising that the studio didn't go with this radical new direction and instead played it safer going forward. Number 1. Edgar Wright's Ant-Man heist movie. One of the MCU's biggest ever disappointments was losing Edgar Wright as the director of Ant-Man all the way back in 2014. Just as the movie was about to start filming, Wright exited the project altogether, citing creative differences with Marvel themselves. While directors can come and go quite a lot though, this stung more than others because Wright had actually been working on this movie for around 8 years, at the start of the MCU's entire history. Wright has since diplomatically stated, and I quote, "I wanted to make a Marvel movie, but I don't think Marvel wanted to make an Edgar Wright movie." Ultimately, the film and its upcoming sequel was handed off to Peyton Reed, who did a pretty good job, all things considered, who cut out some of the heist elements and tied the narrative more directly into other Avengers movies. So that's our list, and these are the superhero movies we very nearly got, but I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below, and if you think any of these movies would have been better than the eventual ones we actually got. And if you like this video, you can always go down below and give us a like, share, subscribe, and even head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day.